Welcome to the Knitrepreneurs again. We are here this week, very excited to talk about a few different things with you this evening. We have a bit of we're working on a bit of a regular agenda for our little chat. And tonight we're looking at a bit of the business concept that we're going to be talking about is point of difference. So we're going to have a chat about how that connects to our why of our business, which we talked about last week. So that'll be good. Pru's got some tips to share on the difference between frogging and tinking. Sorry, I had not heard that tinking word before, so I'm keen on that one. And then, of course, as usual, we have books to share, and the Chicken of Wisdom has a special page from a book to read for you. So that's
sounds like a good evening. I'm looking forward to it. Updates, Jess?
Okay, so a little bit of an update. Hope to have a fuller update next week with some dates locked in for retreats for next year. So hoping there's around an end of March, start of April time, maybe a June time, and there's already a booking for mid-August time. So stay tuned for those. I'll just finalize a few things and then put it out there to which one will be a connection focus, which one will be a learning focus, and which one will have this sort of deluxe focus of both, and live-in tutors and stuff like that. So stay tuned.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. I don't really have any updates at the moment. There's lots of things happening in the background as per usual. So no updates from me.
Okay, no worries. Well, let me launch in then. What is the point of difference that dear Pru has?
I think it's such a good question. Thinking what's my point of difference? And I think I have to go back to the why. Pardon?
Why is it important for us to know this?
I think it's important, firstly, for the business, but the Knitrepreneur to know themselves what they are bringing that others aren't. And I think it's important for it to be linked to the why. So remember I talked about my 3 concepts or ideas that are part of my why. So around connection, learning, and creativity. So my point of difference really, I would say, is that learning aspect, because connection is a part of everything we do. I mean, it's part of the knitting. Knitting itself is about connection. And so many people will name connection as being part of why they have a yarn store, or why they have a charity knitting group, or why they host retreats, etc. But and creativity, again, it goes part and parcel with knitting. But I think the learning aspect of my designs and my teaching is so important. So I draw from my experience as a trained teacher. I'm a registered teacher, and I've been teaching for 15 years, both teenagers and adults. So my patterns are based on skills that I want to share. And I actually, when I'm designing, I'll set parameters for myself around what skills. Usually it's 2 or 3 in focus, or one sort of main technique, and then sort of skills that fit under that one main technique. And the same with my class designs. I always start with, what's achievable to learn in this time? What's my learning intention or my learning outcomes for my students or participants? And that sort of frames my design, and I'll go from there about what can be achieved within the usually 3 hours or whatever it is. So
like a good lesson, when our students walk away feeling successful and feeling like they made progress towards something, don't even have to have finished it, then we know how satisfying that can be. And so anything that brings that along is awesome. Cool. So I'd say for Yarn Trail Victoria, my point of difference, well, it comes back to connection, doesn't it? Like you said, it's all for me, it just centers around that as well. And the connection with the local community and the local ideas in those communities. So wherever retreats are, how are we connecting locally now? That could be with a local farm, it could be with a local food producer, and that makes part of our retreat. Local craftsperson, someone who comes along and teaches us dyeing who lives in the local area, like things like that. I think initially I was thinking, it has to be a farm every time that I connect to, but that is quite an overwhelming task and that will certainly be a driver for the whole business of Yarn Trail Victoria. But it's also really interesting to think about what other local connections can we actually have that are accessible and interesting to people and work in complement with yarn and yarn trails. So again, it's about connection. So knowing that the retreats that I run, people will have a connection locally. And that with the yarn trail itself, when that map is finally ready, then there's a very obvious connection in a map. These connections have been mapped, and people can access that and go there. So awesome. It's simply going to be events and experiences that are really focused on the community that we can build around loving yarn and the things that we can do with it.
So powerful, Jess. And I love that a core part of your business is really having that connection mapped, like literally. Yeah. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting that, getting that a bit more sorted. And all of these things take a lot of time and research and all of the communication and stuff, but certainly we'll be there. And I imagine a map, that's going to be something that's quite dynamic. It might change from year to year depending on, people getting to know about the yarn trail and who wants to be involved and in what way and stuff like that. So a living map, one might say, or a dynamic map. So that's exciting. Yeah, it's really cool.
So good. So I'm wanting to know the Knitrepreneurs who are watching what their point of difference is, or what they believe their point of difference is, and can they make a link between their point of difference and their why?
Yeah.
And why not? If they can't, why?
Why not? What's going on there? And it would be lovely to hear from some other Knitrepreneurs about what their why is and how can you say that quite succinctly?
Yes.
Or does it take, because I think that's important as well. You need to be able to say why you exist pretty quickly.
That's right. It's almost like your elevator pitch, because you'll meet all sorts of people. Might be other yarn dyers. It might be yarn stores that you want to wholesale to. It might be at a craft market and you're wanting to pitch to your customers about what you do, and being able to say it and let it roll off the tongue naturally, I think is a really important skill to have, and it's kind of a key step in moving from that being a hobbyist to being a business owner, which we're going to talk about later.
And I think so. I think so, and also it helps us. When we can really articulate our why. It helps us to know what to say no to, which is just as important as what to say yes to. Yeah. And I think that's so important. And for someone like me who's very good at saying yes to lots of things and then ending up too busy, or, I'm much better at that. I'm much better at that than I was. There is some refinement to work on, but that's
I'm the same, Jess.
It's hard. I want to do all the things.
Yeah, same, because they all sound fun.
They all sound fun. But the problem is, the reality is, you can't do them all well.
Yeah.
So, because there's just not enough time. So I think defining the why and then the values that run along with that really give us the tool to say, that sounds awesome, but it doesn't fit for me at the moment because I have, my focus is elsewhere. That's right. And that all feeds into the why and that point of difference as well.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, what a good conversation.
I know.
Frogging, tinking.
Frogging, tinking. Yeah. So I have a confession. I generally won't frog things. I'll kind of try to work it out. I tink frequently, but frogging not so much. I think that's.
I love this language. It's wonderful.
I'm happy to sit with some small errors. I'm happy, especially if that happened a few rows ago. I'm not going to go. Sometimes I can drop and tink one stitch. and fix it a few rows below. If I can't, I'll just kind of make it work. Like I've got enough tricks and tips in my, bag of experience that I can kind of draw on, and it makes it fit. But I'm working on the MCal, and I just finished the tip of the one of the wings, and I just didn't have, I mustn't have decreased at the right rate or something, and had all this excess fabric, and I'd sort of done extra decreases towards the end to make it fit. And then I just kind of cast it off and parked it and went on to the next wing, but it was still irking me. So I frogged it, which means I unpicked the cast off and I started ripping it back, and there was so much yarn bath. It was terrible. But I stayed with it, wrapped it all back up into a ball and reknit it. And it's all good now. But how do you know when to frog and when to tink? Well, tinking's usually one or, a few stitches, not multiple stitches, not whole rows.
Yeah. So tinking's when you one by one work backwards with your needles. You're not taking the needles out and pulling anything. You're just literally unknitting.
Knitting backwards, because tink, T-I-N-K, is knit backwards. So what you might do is insert, there's different techniques, but what I do is I insert the needle into the base of the stitch that I'm wanting to unknit. And then once that's safely on the left-hand needle, then I'll remove it, pull on the thread and remove it from the right-hand needle. And I'll do that, the 2, 5, whatever stitches that are required to get me back. So like I'm working on a pair of socks at the moment, and I realized, oh no, I should have started decreasing to do the shaping at the toe, and I'd got 10 stitches in. So I just tinked those 10 stitches to get it back to the beginning of the row. So tinking is a really useful thing to be able to do. You can also tink downwards or vertically. So if you're doing it's I don't know if it's tinking or if it's just a little bit of knitting surgery, but so you're doing like ribbing, and you realize that you've done one extra knit stitch or one extra purl stitch from in the row, or maybe 2 rows below. You can just drop that stitch, and then using a crochet hook, reorient the stitches so that they're all in the correct formation. If they're all meant to be knit and you did a purl and you need to correct it, you can tink it or drop the stitch and crawl it back up. But I think generally it's used to describe moving backwards for a few stitches in that current working row.
Okay,
cool. That's the technique for tonight.
It is the technique for tonight. I love that it's knit backwards. I didn't know that.
Yeah, when you see it written, you're like, oh, God.
Yeah, of course.
And do you know why it's called frogging?
Rip it, rip it, rip it.
That's right.
Saying rip it. Yeah, that was when I found that out, I just had a real bit of a giggle and thought, oh yeah, knitting's for me. This is good.
Yeah, I like it.
Absolutely. What is next?
So we were going to talk about books, and then Chicken of Wisdom.
Yes, it was your favorite, isn't it? Yeah,
I do love the Chicken of Wisdom. I feel very sad that I don't own my own. I love that you went to your mum's and you had a chicken there, and at home you've got a chicken. But when I had to do episode, I think it was 3 on my own, I had no Chicken of Wisdom, and I had to use the Llama of Truth. It was very sweet, but not quite a replacement for the Chicken of Wisdom.
I have seen some patterns, so I think maybe I feel a project in our future coming that does involve knitted fowl, knitted poultry.
Fiber fowl.
Yeah. There's something there. So that would be good, because I'm actually also thinking of how that can be taken into some of my classes at school, perhaps. The chicken can come along, or a version of the chicken or something like that. I might have it sit on my desk. And
how do you think your 14-year-old students will take to that?
They'll just think I'm crazy, which is exactly what I'm going.
But they probably do already.
They already do. Like I had one student say to me today, I don't know if you're serious or joking, miss. And I'm like, oh, well, you'll find out, won't you? It's quite wonderful. I love it when they look at me and go, I'm not quite sure what she's going to do next.
Pull out a chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that'll be funny. All right, and your
Right,
book?
books.
Do you have a book?
All right, yes, I've got a book. This is actually not my book. This is my sister's book. I bought it for her birthday, but I think the rule is that when you buy a knitting book for someone else, you're allowed to spend a bit of time flicking through it.
Quality time. It's quality control even.
So this is Inkling by Kate Davies. She's one of my favorite designers. She's a Scottish designer, and so she does a lot of like color work and stuff. And I'd say that the majority of her stuff is around like color work and what have you. But she also has some really lovely structural pieces. And actually, at the moment, I've just joined her All Over Club. So every week you get a new pattern, and she writes the most beautiful blogs. She did a whole thing around blue stockings, like, and you'll love this too, because there's a whole history kind of element to it. And then that became a book. So when she sent out this thing about, join my All Over Club, and at the end you'll get a book, I was like, yes, please.
Oh,
So yeah, she's beautiful. So yeah, Ree's a big fan of hers, my sister, for whom this book is destined as a present, because she loved Handywoman, which was about Kate's recovery from a stroke. And Ree's an occupational therapist, so she just found it absolutely fascinating. She often works with stroke patients and helps to rehabilitate them. So yeah, it was.
So was it about Kate's journey with knitting as part of her rehab?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's called Handywoman. I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, I will look that up for sure.
Yeah,
Okay, my book is a small one that the Chicken of Wisdom appreciates as well. My book is by Stephanie Pearl McPhee. I believe she's American Canadian. And she is hilarious. She's a knitter. She's an obsessive knitter. She'll walk around knitting socks. She can't stop knitting socks. But she's written quite a few books, and she's just very, very funny. So I've got this one called At Knit's End, because at some point we're all at knit's end.
Yeah.
And the tagline is Meditations for Women Who Knit Too Much. Now, and I think possibly in our lives, Pru, we might know some women for whom these meditations
might be useful. But then, can you ever knit too much, Jess? I dispute that.
This is true. I suppose you can, to the point where you can't knit if your elbow hurts, but other than that, no, you can't knit too much. You can't produce too much, and I just don't think there's any such thing as too much yarn. This is a ridiculous idea. And so, of course, I've got the chicken here.
Hello, Chicken of Wisdom.
That's right. She doesn't quite have a quote for us this evening of her own, but she's just going to assist me to share page 175 with you, which is about yarn buying. So it begins with a quote by I suppose someone quite literary, and then a bit of an explanation. So here we go. So, one cannot collect all the beautiful shells on the beach. One can collect only a few, and they are more beautiful if they are few. Bear with me. This is one theory of yarn buying. We must not overburden ourselves with greed and want, but instead gather only a few. I feel like I'm giving a sermon. Just those perfect balls of yarn that are special to us. Limiting the amount of yarn that we stash makes us treasure those few balls even more. And it ensures that we actually fulfill the destiny of those meager skeins. Wait for it. This works fine if you think a few should be followed by the word 100. I love it. Thank you, Stephanie Pearl McPhee, who she really has the word pearl in her surname. I think that's so apt, and she's a knitter. It's spelt the actual pearl way, not the knitting one, but yeah. So a few hundred. Yeah. So no such thing as too much yarn. Be proud of your stash if you have one. And if you don't have one, because that's not how you function, that's fine too. But our stashes are about potential and dreams and creativity.
I agree. They're my palette. How could I, deny myself a creative endeavor because I didn't have the right paint in my palette?
That's right. A painter would have multiple paints, wouldn't they? A yarn artist will have the same, and quite rightly should, within one's means, of course.
Of course. Well, on that note, that beautiful pearl from Stephanie Pearl McPhee and the Chicken of Wisdom.
Supported by the Chicken of Wisdom.
Supported by the Chicken of Wisdom. I think we say good night.
I think we do say good night.
Good morning, or whatever time it is for you, but it's night for us. So
yes, it is night time for us. It's a Thursday evening, and so it's a school night, everyone. So I've got to get going and sort out tomorrow. But thank you all again for watching, and yeah, do tune in again next week because we will have a few more updates then.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Thanks again, Jess.
Bye, Pru. See ya.